Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. We just passed 1,500 subscribers and 200,000 views on the YouTube channel. I appreciate all your guys' support so much, and I cannot wait to continue to bring you sports content in the future. Now, I did a preview and prediction for both of the Champions Classic games earlier this week, and I'm going to do the same thing for the Empire Classic as well. There's going to be a couple of good games in this little tournament as well, and there's going to be plenty more tournaments coming up like the Battle for Atlantis and the Maui tournament as Thanksgiving comes right around the corner. This is one of the best times of year for college basketball, even though a lot of people are still watching football. There's going to be some great games, but in the Empire Classic this year, you've got the UConn Huskies playing the Indiana Hoosiers in the first game on Sunday afternoon, and then you've got the Louisville Cardinals playing the Texas Longhorns. And then out of those four teams, whoever wins those games is going to play each other in the championship game, and then whoever loses will play each other in the consolation game. I'm going to preview and predict all of these matchups and see what I think will happen. Now, in the first game, you got UConn and Indiana, and on paper, this looks like the Huskies are just going to roll over the Hoosiers, because look what UConn's done to start the year. They beat Northern Arizona 95-52, they beat Stonehill 107-67, and they beat Mississippi Valley State 87-53, and that was with their potential NBA draft lottery pick Stephon Castle out with an injury. He might be back for this Indiana game, but that was a tough loss for UConn to suffer. But against Mississippi Valley State, they still had no problem. But when you look at Indiana's results, they are not blowing out the teams they're playing. They beat Florida Gulf Coast 69-63, and Florida Gulf Coast is not a bad team, but Indiana still, if you really think they're going to be good this year, probably should have beat them by more, but it was their first game. But then they struggled against Army 72-64, Army struggling to start the season, and then Indiana beat Wright State 89-80. So all of these performances were not super impressive for the Hoosiers. They did look a bit better against Wright State, but if Indiana wants to have any shot to win this game against UConn, they're going to have to play a lot better, because the Huskies roster, even though they lost some guys to the NBA draft like Jordan Hawkins and Abmas last year, they've got Alex Caravan, Tristan Newton back, and then the big man on campus, Donovan Clingman at 7'2". He's a mountain of a man. He hasn't even had to play that much for UConn yet because they've been blowing everybody out. He's only been playing 18 minutes a game, and he's averaging 15 points. Caravan and Newton are averaging over 10 points as well, and Cam Spencer, the Rutgers transfer, has been a fantastic addition for Dan Hurley's squad. He was a really good player at Rutgers, but it looks like he's elevated his game at UConn with more talent around him. And then Stephon Castle, as I've already mentioned, the star freshman for the Huskies. He was out injured in the Mississippi Valley State game, but I do think he could be back for this game because Dan Hurley said it is a minor injury. If he's back, then UConn will have a great shot to beat Indiana. And then on their bench, Samson Johnson, Hassan Jar, and Solomon Ball, they're all solid players that I think will be able to help contribute in this matchup against the Hoosiers. But then you look at Indiana. Kel'el Ware, the transfer from Oregon, he's been a great addition for Indiana, and he's 7 feet tall as well. So that's going to be a big matchup between Kel'el Ware and Donovan Clingman. Whoever wins that matchup is going to have a big impact on who wins this game. It's not the only important matchup, but it's a very important matchup. Then you look at Xavier Johnson for Indiana, the 6-year senior. He did get banged up a bit in the Wright State game, but he should be available to play against UConn. If not, that'll be a big blow to Indiana, but I do believe he should be able to play. But Xavier Johnson versus Tristan Newton, two guys that are very experienced at point guard. That's going to be a great matchup to watch. Malik Renew for Indiana is a really solid forward that's coming back for his sophomore season this year. Trey Galloway is another senior guard for Indiana. And then Mackenzie Mbako, Indiana's star freshman at 6'8", the equivalent of Stephon Castle over at UConn. That's going to be a good matchup as well to see which player can win that battle. And then Gabe Cupps is a solid guard off the bench for the Hoosiers. And Indiana's bench hasn't been great to start the year, but guys like Anthony Walker, Caleb Banks, CJ Gunn, they can play, but they're going to have to provide some more for the Hoosiers if they're going to have a successful season. But for this game, will Indiana have enough to be able to beat UConn? I think Indiana's talented enough to win, and they're not turning the ball over a massive amount, but their defense is struggling. They're not closing out on three-point shooters, and UConn is too good of a three-point shooting team for Indiana to be able to guard the way that they have and be able to win this game. And the fact Donovan Clingman is going to be able to neutralize Kel'el Ware and Malik Renew, they're not going to be as dominant as they've been in the first 3 games of the season. I think Indiana has a shot in this game, and until Indiana gets better at shooting the three themselves and guarding the three-point line, they're not going to beat UConn. I'm going to go with the Huskies to beat the Hoosiers 84-72 for UConn to advance to the championship game. Then on the other side, you've got the Louisville Cardinals and the Texas Longhorns. Now, most people would say if you think the UConn-Indiana game is easy to predict, this one's even easier to predict because Louisville's already lost the game. Louisville beat UMBC 94-93 in game 1 by 1 point, and then they lost to Chattanooga 81-71. A good basketball team does not lose to Chattanooga in the second game of the season. Not the first game, but the second game. So Louisville still struggling, and then Louisville beat Coppin State 61-41. That was a good defensive performance, but Coppin State really struggled on offense. But looking at Louisville's roster, they've got some talented players. It's not like Louisville's cupboard is dry and they just don't have any good players. Mike James, Trey White, and Skyy Clark, they're all really solid basketball players that would be able to start at most college basketball teams in the sport. Trey White, the transfer from USC, has been putting up some pretty good figures. He's averaging like 12 points per game, but the problem for Louisville is the turnover. Skyy Clark, the guard, the transfer from Illinois, who's been running the point a lot for Louisville, he's got 3 turnovers per game. That's not a good sign to have 3 turnovers per game from your point guard. And also Trey White's averaging around 3 turnovers. And then Tyler Johnson, he's a freshman, so it's more excusable, but he's another guard that Louisville brought in this freshman class for the Cardinals. He is averaging 3 turnovers per game. So between 3 players, Louisville's averaging 9 turnovers per game. That is a problem, and that's going to get them beat against most of the best teams in college basketball. J.J. Trainer's a solid player. Like I said, Louisville has talent, but they are way too turnover prone, and they're not a good enough defensive team consistently yet to really believe that they have a good shot to beat Texas. But you never know. Texas could have a bad game. Looking at what the Longhorns have done, they beat Incarnate Word 88-56 in game 1. They beat Delaware State 86-59 in game 2, and then they beat the Rice Owls 80-64 in game 3. So the Longhorns are 3-0. Like Indiana and UConn in the other matchups, that's good for the Longhorns. That they have not slipped up like Louisville has so far this season. Guys like Ithiel Horton, a transfer that they added over the offseason, he's a guy that a lot of people weren't expecting to be one of the best players on Texas this year, but he's having a great start to the year. Max Abmas, the Oral Roberts transfer, obviously people were expecting him to have a big impact, even though he is on the smaller side height-wise, but I will say that even though he has turned it over a bit too much, he has been as advertised. He's averaging around 15 points per game. He's playing great basketball for the Longhorns. Tyrese Hunter, he transferred in from Iowa State a couple years ago. He has all the talent in the world, but he's still not getting over the turnover problem that he has. He kind of looks like some of the guys that Louisville has. He has talent, but he just can't get out of his own way sometimes to be able to elevate his game to the next level and possibly get him to the next level in the NBA. Tyrese Hunter has that type of talent, but it hasn't come all together for him yet. Cade Shedrick, the Virginia transfer, he's a pretty solid player. He's putting up pretty good stats. Dylan Mitchell, a 5-star freshman that has come back for his sophomore year, he has improved his play on the glass. He is averaging 10 boards per game so far. That's going to be huge for Texas as they look to out-rebound the Louisville Cardinals. And then Zarek Oyena, he rounds out the bench rotation for Texas. So the Longhorns have a deeper rotation than Louisville. They got more talented players than Louisville, even though the Cardinals have talent. If Louisville can take care of the basketball, they'll have a shot in this game. But I just think the Longhorns are more talented. They're going to take care of the basketball better, even though they do have turnover-prone guys like Tyrese Hunter. And they're going to shoot the basketball better from the three-point line. I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorns to beat the Louisville Cardinals 84-67 for the Longhorns to advance to the championship game. Now I'm going to predict the consolation game and the championship game as well. Since I went with Indiana and Louisville losing in the first round games, the Hoosiers and the Cardinals will face each other. I believe that Indiana is a less turnover-prone team than Louisville. As long as Indiana takes care of the ball better than Louisville, and if Indiana can dominate the paint, and the Cardinals are going to have a hard time shutting down Kel'el, Ware, and Malik Renew, those two guys are going to be beasts down low. And even though Indiana struggles to shoot from 3, I feel like the Hoosiers are just a better team all around. They've got more talent. They have more disciplined players. And I believe that the Hoosiers will be able to beat the Louisville Cardinals 82-75. The only reason I have it that close is because Indiana's defense is not up to snuff yet. They're still struggling on that side of the ball. So I think Louisville will have success on the offensive end. But the Hoosiers will be able to knock off the Louisville Cardinals in the consolation game. And then for the championship game in the Empire Classic in New York City between the UConn Huskies and the Texas Longhorns, this is going to be a fantastic battle. UConn, obviously the defending national champions, and I've already outlined their roster. Guys like Donovan, Clingman, Alex Carabin, Tristan Newton, they're going to be a problem for guys like Caden Shedrick, Tyrese Hunter, and Max Abmas. Texas definitely has the talent to hang with UConn, but I feel like the way UConn has looked to start the year versus Texas, they do look like the better basketball team. Both of these teams are ranked in the top 25, but UConn's in the top 10, whereas Texas is not in the top 10 in the AP rankings right now. So the AP poll doesn't mean much this early in the season, but UConn definitely looks the part of a top 10 team. And yes, you can say that UConn will be playing the tougher opponent in the Indiana Hoosiers, whereas Texas is playing an easier opponent in Louisville. I do believe that that's not going to really make much of a difference here because both teams are having to play a game, and it's always tough to turn around the next day and play again. So both teams are going to be fatigued. I think that UConn is just the better team all around on paper, but Texas will give them a run for their money and keep it close. But I'm going to go with with the UConn Huskies to beat the Texas Longhorns 80-76 in the championship game of the Empire Classic. And the UConn Huskies are going to continue to show their dominance so far this season in college basketball, right off the heels of their 2023 national championship in college basketball, which was their 5th national championship. I'm looking forward to the Empire Classic. Should be a lot of fun. A lot of these tournaments are coming up in college basketball, like the Maui tournament and the Battle for Atlantis, that are going to be awesome to watch during the Thanksgiving week in college basketball. But don't sleep on the Empire Classic on Sunday and Monday. They've got 4 really good basketball games that are going to hit our screen. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Who's going to win these Empire Classic games? And if you feel that UConn will win the whole thing and Indiana will be able to win the consolation game, or if you think that another team might be able to win it all, like Texas or even maybe Indiana or Louisville, who knows? And let me know what you guys think about my picks for all of these Empire Classic games. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.